What fiat does is it breaks the law of sowing and reaping in the universe. And this is why we have chaos among humanity under a fiat standard, is because God's law says that he speaks and things are created. So we have the things that are created. We have the universe. We have everything we need. God has made it, and he made it on the merit of his own word. So he spoke and coded the software of the universe, and it works, and everything falls under his authority. So God has the ability to make real value by his word. By his fiat, he can create real value. This is necessary. This is a necessary precondition for anything, right? People ask, why is there anything? Um, why does anything exist? The necessary precondition for existence, intelligent existence, is an intelligent mind that is outside of creation. So God is the necessary precondition for all things. He creates all things, and it's all good because by his merit, he does it. So here's the thing. He puts us here now, and he says, use what I made. All of this, I made it all. Use it, reformat it, structure it in such a way as to expand, be fruitful, multiply. Use what I made to create different layer two technologies in order to make life flourish. That's the point. That's what it means to be made in God's image. So, what fiat money does, it turns that mandate on its head, and it says humans have the ability to speak value into existence. That's what fiat money is. It's decreeing value on the merits of what? On the basis of what? Of the will of man, not the will of God. Money is supposed to be a free market technology that organically and naturally arises among people due to its favorable attributes for trade. That's not what fiat money is. Fiat money is a decree from men. This is money. This is value. On what basis? On the basis of our word. So it's a carnal fiat, not a divine fiat. So that's why you see chaos and disruption in the monetary network, because it's breaking not the laws of math per se, but the laws of God in the universe. You must sow in order to reap. I'm not sure if that answered your question,
No,
but
no, I think it does very well. I mean, I would probably frame it differently. I would say the reason we have chaos is not fiat money. I would say the reason we have chaos is sin. But
right.
I do think that, well, I mean, really, if you think about, what is sin? What is, the sin of Adam and Eve? What is the sin of every human being, you, me, everyone watching this? Like, what is our fundamental sin? Our fundamental sin is we want to go against the order and rule that God has desired, right? The taking of the fruit is saying, I want to be God. I want to make my own rules, right? And so what you're saying, I think is a bigger picture than just fiat money. I think chaos is sin issue, but then the fiat, like you're describing so well, is that saying, here's a set of numbers, and now I can distort those numbers to where I get an artificially larger amount of those numbers, right? Alan is $100, I have $100. In light of the recent emergency or whatever, people have voted to me the power that I can now create for myself another $100, to where we've gone from 50-50 to now I have two-thirds and you have a third, right? Like, I am basically this monetary god that can just create energy out of thin air, because now via the force of a gun, I can confiscate your resources at those two numbers, right? So yeah, so I fully get what you're saying. I mean, I'd probably expand that more to a larger sin issue, and
Yeah.
then
If you really think about sin, sin
mhm.
is man um, decreeing their own right and wrong,
Right,
right? Sin
precisely.
is, yeah, sin is fiat in the sense of so I use these two categories, carnal fiat and divine fiat. So the carnal fiat is when man decrees anything outside of God's prescribed order. That's called carnal fiat. And all sin falls into that category, because all sin is men decreeing against God's decree, supposing we're smarter than God. This is what happened in the garden with Eve. She was deceived. Well, yeah, you know what? Maybe God didn't really mean what he said. Maybe this serpent has a a good point here, and she went against what he said. So divine fiat is what God's decreed. So like I use this analogy a lot because it works and it makes sense in our current climate in our culture. Divine fiat is this: God has decreed Luke is a man. Okay, you were born a male, right? We're all in agreement.
I agree.
Carnal carnal fiat would be Luke saying, "No, I disagree, God. You must now identify me as a woman. You must call me she and her. You must call me whatever the feminine of Luke is. I don't know." Or Cindy or something. So that's carnal fiat. That's saying, no, God, you are wrong. Your decree was wrong. My decree is authoritative, and everyone has to agree with it. This is carnal fiat, and it's just in one area. Sin in all areas acts in the same way. No, God, you're wrong. I'm right. Period.
Mm-hmm.
And in the monetary system, that's what fiat money fundamentally is. Saying, no, God, sorry, I know you said sow and reap. We're just gonna reap
Mm-hmm.
and steal and pillage.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. And this, for me personally, Alan, I'm sure you agree, but for me personally, this is why, advancing Bitcoin for me personally is so important because I believe if, what is money? Money is the base layer level of communicating value across society, right? We spend money on things we value, right? That could be a person, that could be a place, that could be a vacation, that could be a new car, that could be whatever. You know, like Jesus said, your treasure is where your heart is, right? Or your heart is where your treasure is, right? I mean, and so my view is that some people view fiat money, political currency, as the root of all problems or the root is all evil. But I think the root of all problems is sin, a
Right.
layer below. But I do think that political currency, fiat money, this false fiat money, right, that you're describing, this human led fiat money, um, I think that brings an economic incentive to perpetuating and expanding sin, right? So obviously you just touched on a very controversial issue of, male, female, sexuality, all that. But I
And,
mean,
and isn't that interesting that
Mhm.
that's controversial? Why?
That's my point. That's my point is that, especially, the older generations, the boomers, it's like so many of them that I talk to are like, I don't recognize forget the country. Like, I don't recognize the world. Like, I don't recognize, and it's sad. It's sad for them that they're seeing the world in many ways deteriorate. And it's sad for the younger people that they're being led astray in a wide variety of issues, which we don't have to get into here. But I think the fundamental reason it's not that something new has changed. Like, it's not like it's the president's fault. It's not like that some magical thing just shifted. Like, the world's always been broken. But
Right.
and I think we see this in history when there is a when the culture, the monetary network of the culture is incentivized to perpetuate the lies and the distortions of the false decree of human beings that sowing and reaping is no longer reality. Like, I think that incentivizes everything else, right? I mean, we saw this in Germany with their hyperinflation. We've seen sexual deviancy, we've seen infanticide, we've seen genocide, we've seen all sort of moral tragedies and travesties happen in tandem with the direction of the nation's currency, right? And the problem is not political currency. The problem is sin. And in my
Right.
view, political currency is just a technological exploit for perpetuating and accelerating the rate of
Exactly.
sin at every level of society. So,
So what when Christians will ask me or comment saying, "Hey man, like be careful because you don't want to fall into the love of money. You talk about money a lot. Don't fall into the love of money." And I'm sure it comes from a sincere place of love and care. Of course, you don't want to fall into the love of money. I'm not suggesting that that's a good thing. However, what I like to respond to them with is this: look, if you, or rather, let me say it this way: if a society um, corporately deviates from God's law, do you think it's going to be a good outcome or a bad outcome? Well, if you're a Christian, you're going to say, well, if a society deviates from God's law, that's going to be bad for them. Exactly. That's the point. We have corporately as a society, and you really could say as the world, since the US dollar is the reserve currency, have deviated from God's command in the area of money. You know, God tells us in Deuteronomy 25 that we should have a just and fair weight, that our money should be such that the policies are just and honest and fair and not manipulated in any degree. It should be open and fair for everyone. That's God's monetary policy. So if you take the whole world and you twist God's law in this area and you make it the opposite, what do you think's going to happen? That's a sin. And now you're proliferating sin to every human being using this monetary network. Now, I'm not saying if you hold dollars, that's a sin for you. No, he who oversees the system has the greater sin in this situation. We are simply the oppressed because, like you said earlier, they're holding a gun to us and saying, use this money. And if you don't, it's going to go bad for you. So the sin is not in the oppressed, the sin is on the oppressor. That might seem extreme for some people, but that's the reality that we live under. So
That's for a side note, if I may interrupt. That's how all sin is, right? It's like people, again, in our own moral decrees, we want to pretend like there's good people and bad people, right? And we'll split people based on race, on class, on age, on gender, on all of us want to think there's good people and bad people, but the reality of sin, and as you well described with fiat, but then expanding it even further, all sin, is
mhm,
that we're all victims and perpetrators, right? I'm a victim of sin all day, every day, and I'm a perpetrator of sin all day, every day, as are you, as in everyone else. So just to make that point, but that's the problem with fiat, is that everyone's to blame because we all
right.
go along with it, and no one's to blame, right?
Mhm.
But some are more to blame than others, that's for sure. I want to thank you for being a supporter of mine and a viewer of my channel here and a follower of mine. It really means a lot to me that you would support me in my efforts to expand Bitcoin education to a wider and wider audience. And someone else that's doing the same here is my friend and fellow partner and supporter, Brian DeMint. Brian DeMint has done many efforts in Bitcoin here over the last few years, and this is one of them. This is his book. It's Bitcoin Evangelism. See, Brian was the former founder of a crypto project, and once he realized Bitcoin and why it's unique compared to other digital assets and other forms of tokens and money, he wrote this book. He wrote this book comparing why Bitcoin is unique in this sense. So no matter if you're new to Bitcoin, if you're trying to preach the message of Bitcoin, or you know someone that is a little more advanced, wherever your experience level, where you are, this is a book that's probably going to be very useful to you. The text is very readable, lots of bolded quotes from many people throughout history about why Bitcoin's unique, comparisons to former technology, why Bitcoin is in a similar way people are irrationally scared of it in the beginning, and lots of great visuals explaining various aspects about Bitcoin, the regular political currency and financial system, and why Bitcoin is most likely going to go up in purchasing power in the future. So again, whether you're new to Bitcoin, you're just trying to explain to someone why Bitcoin is unique compared to other crypto tokens, crypto projects, and political currencies, this could be a good visual aid for you to share to people with easy to readable text and great concepts in there as well. So if you want to continue to support me and you want to support someone else, Brian DeMint's book, Bitcoin Evangelism, I highly recommend you check it out. Thanks.